You're listening to Send This to Your CEO, the B2B Tech Marketing Podcast, presented by 4B Marketing. Explore the world of B2B tech marketing with industry insiders and experts. Our episodes are packed with the latest insights, strategies, and trends to help you stay ahead in this ever-evolving industry. Whether you want to sharpen your marketing skills or keep up with tech developments, we have everything you need right here.
My name is Sam Grice. I am the Director of Strategy with 4B Marketing. We're a tech channel business outcome-oriented marketing agency. Ultimately, what that means is our strategy needs to be focused on 5 key pillars of the business: drive revenue, reduce cost, reduce risk, cash flow optimization, and asset utilization. And so whenever we're building a strategy, we're thinking about those 5 pillars. How are we touching 3 to 5 of those pillars to help go drive a business forward, right? We need to be revenue generating. And so a hot topic in the space today is that B2B social media marketing side of the house. And I'm fortunate today to be joined by 2 of my colleagues here at 4B Marketing. I've got the content team with us. So I'm going to pass it over to Aaron to do an introduction and introduce SJ.
Sure. Yeah. Thanks, Sam. Appreciate it. Great intro. So I'm Aaron Rosenbluth. I am the director of content at 4B Marketing. So I've been actually with the company since its inception, actually in some ways a little bit before its inception. So, and I've been dealing with social and content this entire time. So I've been watching for over a decade how all of this has kind of evolved and changed. And we've worked with both B2C and B2B companies, 2 different sides of our business that we operate. But primarily when I was doing more of the day-to-day management of things, it was for B2B businesses. So I've had a unique seat to watch the changes and how it's impacted the way that you market B2B brands on social. But I'm also joined here by my amazing counterpart, SJ. They've been responsible for kind of bringing new life into some of our own and then our clients. I'll be honest, at times relatively bland B2B approaches to social media. But I lean on SJ heavily for all things when it comes to social, because they are absolutely of the generation that, grew up in this, understands it. They're extremely online, and they bring just a completely different energy to the conversation. And I trust them implicitly.
Thanks, Aaron.
That's great. SJ, you want to go ahead and introduce yourself? But
that was pretty awesome. Thank you for that. I appreciate you. And yeah, I really appreciate your expertise as well. And it's been an awesome partnership. So I'm excited to talk about B2B social.
Awesome. Great. Well, let's dive in here. And I want to touch on something that you actually mentioned right off the bat there, Aaron, that sometimes B2B social media can come off as bland, right? Mm-hmm. There's a massive opportunity to gain participation, gain relevance, gain trust, all of these pieces that can come in to drive success for your full marketing stack. And one thing that SJ has done on our side is made our LinkedIn not bland anymore. It's been a lot of fun to watch over the past couple of weeks of what's happened with events and different holidays that we've had coming up, some of which has been at my expense, which has been a little bit fun. It's always a good time, right? You can make it a good time. And so first topic that I kind of want to talk about is, what are you gaining from participating? Right? There is a massive opportunity in the space to be able to utilize social media to be successful. And so, Aaron, I want to open it up to you first is, where should social media kind of fit within your architecture from a marketing tech stack perspective of what tactics we're utilizing and what can you gain out of it?
Yeah, great question. So, I want to preface this by saying, well, we'll get into this later when we talk about setting reasonable expectations. I view social media for B2B or B2C generally as part of this entire circle of marketing strategy and tactics, really, that come out of the strategy. It's just one piece in an overarching puzzle. So what you gain from participating, however, is, you've got another channel at your disposal. And in some ways, if you think about it from our standpoint, it's a channel where you can get a little bit broader, break away from strict brand guidelines, get creative, have fun if you choose, and really build a lot of awareness if you are consistent and you're doing things and speaking the right language to the people that want to hear from you. So, again, I don't want to jump too far ahead. A lot of this relates to this idea of how you set reasonable expectations, because I'm not going to sit here and tell you that you should expect or gain a lot of direct ROI all the time from B2B social. But what you have is another channel to let your personality to your thought leadership, your expertise, all of this come forth in a really direct to your audience. I was going to say direct to consumer, which doesn't really apply, but kind of does in a way. You can get directly in front of the people that you want to with this channel that we all know everyone is hanging out on virtually all day long to the detriment of productivity in some cases. But yeah, I just think that you're losing the ability to speak directly to your audience in a specific place where we know they're hanging out if you're not participating. Yeah,
it's a great point. And a couple of things that I want to touch on. I want to open up to SJ on something on that is, one of the pieces you talked about is going kind of outside of the brand guidelines, right? Getting your personality out there. That's an opportunity. And I know SJ, with our LinkedIn personally, you've done a great job with that. Would love to get your perspective on gaining that voice, tone, personality through social media, what your thoughts are.
That's also a great question. So I think that the interesting part about breaking away from your brand guidelines is you can also kind of break away from the language you typically use. You can be a lot more casual and a lot more relatable. And we have examples of really good social later in the presentation, but something that I've noticed from them is that they're talking almost like to a friend, casually to their audience in a way that you wouldn't necessarily get from a lot of these B2B brands. They're very professional, very buttoned up, but the fun part about social is that you can break away from that and kind of let your funky, funny, witty, relatable personality shine through. And sometimes that's what might catch someone's eye. It's surprising and exciting. So
love it. Love it. And I think it comes into kind of our next slide, which is really, what are you missing out on for not participating, right? We've talked about some of the benefits from a perspective of getting our voice, tone, personality out there, being able to speak in a casual audience. And one of the big pieces that both of you touched on is the audience. We're able to connect with our audience, right? So I would argue one of the biggest misses for not participating is you aren't able to have that direct outreach to your clients. I would also argue that in the tech channel and in sales in general, it's a relationship game. We know that the touch points have gone up over the past couple of years to be able to close a meeting, right? And by close a meeting, that being the end goal, get that introduction meeting, right? From 7 touch points with phone calls and digital ads and emails and all of those pieces up closer to 25 to 30 touch points. And so I would argue you're missing one of those big touch points that you can have that isn't intrusive, in your face. It's fun. It gets your voice, tone, personality out there so that you can have a real relationship beyond just, hey, sign up the dotted line and get this box, right? But Aaron, would love to open it up to you for your thought. Sure. Some pieces that may be missing if you aren't participating in social media.
Yeah, I agree with everything you said. I mean, going back to what I said earlier, it really is a place where you can speak directly to the people that you want to get in front of. You need to be thinking about how you're doing that and approach it in the right way to get their attention. But it comes back to this kind of like one-to-one relationship that somebody can feel like they're having with your company, and which relates to what SJ just said, because opening it up to having more of a conversational, sure, be professional, but do it in a way that honors the reasons that people are going to social, which a lot of times is to find a distraction from whatever they're doing in that moment.
Yeah.
So I think if you don't do that, if you're missing an opportunity to create a direct connection with a person, so that they understand who you are, they want to understand who you are because of how you approach social, your energy, your vibe, your tone of voice. And that turns them into somebody that maybe they're not a customer today, but they're developing some sort of appreciation for you and loyalty. Maybe they are a customer and you're just deepening that loyalty. But I think social media is an interesting and unique thing and place where you can really speak directly to the person you want to. I mean, oftentimes if you're you, Sam, if you're the individual, you can literally connect with the person you're trying to sell to. But as a brand, you have an opportunity to personify your brand in a way that you wouldn't in other channels, and to create sort of that one-on-one interaction feeling, which goes back to a different approach. So, a lot of what we see are B2B brands that kind of sit on this like pillar and speak down to the audience and just kind of pump out their own sort of self-involved content, rather than looking at it as like, oh, this is my opportunity to be real, to have my brand operate like a person and really get personable in a conversation with somebody, and attract them with things that are witty, interesting, or thought-provoking, and relatable. So you're missing out on all of that. Why wouldn't you it's there? It's relatively, well, I'm not going to say it's cheap, because you have to invest a lot into it to get things out of it, but it's there. You technically don't have to pay in some ways to be there. So you should use it. There's a lot to the game.
And I'm glad you brought up the investment, because I think that kind of segues us into our next topic, which is realistic expectations.
Yeah.
And diving into realistic expectations, we need to have a realistic expectation for the full marketing effort. But specifically with social media, it is a hot button. And really, because there's a couple different ways you can go about it. You can do organic, which we've heard multiple people tell us, just hack the algorithm, right? Just hack the algorithm, which is such a funny thing to hear, right? Because it doesn't work in that way, right? It just doesn't. And then, so that's organic. And then there's paid as well, right? What are the expectations that we should have from an organization standpoint on each, right? What does that look like? Because when you're talking up to leadership, they're on those 5 business drivers, right? They're focused on reducing costs, driving revenue, reducing risk. That's what they're focused on. And so a big piece for realistic expectations is, how do we set those for leadership so they know what they're investing into? And so, Aaron and Ashley, I'll open this up to both of you. From a realistic expectation standpoint, how do we even get started on realistic goals for social media and where it plays throughout our full marketing journey?
Yeah,
I
I want you to go, Aaron, because I think you have more experience in
I'm the one
you have more long-term experience. So I'll just add on to what you say.
Yeah, expectation setting is that's the whole thing with when it comes to B2B social. I don't think that you should sit here expecting that it's going to be a main driver of revenue. It's really challenging in a lot of ways for a B2B business, particularly to draw a line of direct ROI from social media to revenue. I view it as a supportive element to everything else that you're doing, your full marketing mix. That's why we go back to what I said at the beginning. It's not the only thing that you should be doing. It's a distribution channel for all of the other things that you're doing related to content, for blogs, lead magnets, whatever it is that you're putting out there. Video is increasingly important in social media, depending on the platform. So realistic expectations, I wouldn't sit here telling people that you're going to see a direct line of revenue from this thing. I think developing goals for social can also be a moving target. The ultimate goal that you should have is engagement, and you can take engagement and sort of marry that to website traffic. You can see where your sources of traffic come from, whether or not they're coming in from social. There's various ways to track things in a campaign to see that, and that gets you closer to understanding if it's driving revenue for your business. But it's not something that you necessarily should sit here going like, I'm going to invest all of my hopes and dreams in this thing becoming like a giant moneymaker for me, unless you're sitting here selling a t-shirt or something that you can buy through Instagram, which is a very different conversation than what we're having today. So I think just being very clear on what your goals are as a company, and then looking at the full marketing strategy and understanding where social media can fall into that strategy, and then just being very diligent about monitoring your traffic sources for your site, putting pixels on pages for remarketing. There's a lot of benefit to that. It gives you places where you can develop an audience for people that engage with your content and continue to market to them in various ways. So, but yeah, don't, I'm not going to say that someone should sit here expecting that they're going to earn a bunch of money from social media marketing, particularly for B2B. Just isn't reality most of the time.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I would also say that Aaron and I kind of treat social media sometimes as an experiment, because you don't really know if something's going to work until you try it. That's kind of what we've been doing on our 4B social with these funny posts we've been making, photoshopping Sam and Greg into movie scenes. And we've kind of found that is working, and it's all experimentation. So I will say a realistic expectation is you're not going to know if something works until you try it.
Mm.
It might not work, but it might work. So it's interesting the way that you can kind of the way that we understand that it's not necessarily going to be a huge revenue driver. It kind of frees you up to allowing it to be this experimental, fun, unique channel where you can kind of just put your own lens on it and see what happens.
Love
Totally.
it. Love it.
Totally
I
agree.
love the side of experimentation on this as well. And I think a big piece of the expectation is using one tactic to drive revenue is not successful anymore.
No.
Right? Just sending emails is not going to be successful. Just doing digital advertising is not going to be successful. Just doing cold call campaigns is not going to be successful. So I would argue from an expectation perspective with leadership is let's manage the whole campaign as one investment, right? And all of the tactics that go into that are going to be touch points that help with that. Whether we like it or not, we all have to go through the funnel, right? We have to go through the marketing funnel. And so understanding where each of these tactics can come into play is going to be successful. And so from a social perspective, to me, it's a massive trust signal. This company exists. This company's out there. They're real people behind this. They're having real conversations with us. They're engaging in dialogue. That's the expectation is, from the campaign, not just, hey, one social media post is going to go drive things for us. It needs to be consistent. It needs to be a trust signal, and it needs to be wrapped into a bigger campaign because one tactic no longer does it. And so a good example would be, say that you're hosting a webinar, right? Like us, right? Mm-hmm. What did we do before this? We sent emails, we sent social media posts, we did stuff on Instagram. Is our audience on Instagram? Maybe not, but it's fun. People get to see it. People in my personal network know what I'm doing. All of those pieces are touch points, and it has successfully got conversations going just by me posting stuff on Instagram, where I wouldn't think that would be where our customer base would be, if you will, right? So all of those pieces coming together, and that should be the expectation, not I'm going to invest $10,000 into an advertisement on social media this week. I'm going to get a great ROI. It should be for the bigger picture of actually driving revenue for the business is what we should be doing. So the tactics go into it. But I see you, Aaron. What do you got?
One more thing you're making me think of related to this, you're jogging my memory. So there's another thing about this that highlights the reasons for being there, and also kind of plays into expectations. And it does relate to SEO and overall brand building. So today, the way that Google is constantly changing its algorithms all the time. And what it's looking at now, because of the proliferation of AI content, just sort of the same old keyword stuffing, the old school stuff that people are, for whatever reason, continue to do sort of lazily from a content perspective. Google is looking at how brands' overall awareness everywhere now, including social media. So, it wants to see what you're doing out in the real world, what you're doing on social, putting all the pieces together. So it's another touch point in that marketing mix that tells Google that you're a brand that people trust, you're real, and they care about you. I just thought about that while you were speaking, and it's like it plays into all of this. It's like it's another brand building channel that you need to use that only helps support the rest of your activities related to marketing. So,
well, and that's a great point. There's a lot of noise out there. And so Google and all of these social medias, they're having algorithm updates consistently. So there isn't one trick pony that's going to work. It takes multiple aspects for it. But even the trust signal, I hadn't even thought of that, right? The trust signal to the marketplace is what I was thinking, right? For buyers and consumers of technology, but also on the back end, the trust signal to Google that's being updated constantly, right? To help with search results and all of those pieces is so important, right? There's multiple aspects that we can touch from a social media perspective, but it brings us to our next point, which is, who are you competing against with social media? I know that this is a big topic, and you both opened my eyes to some of the stuff from a competitive landscape perspective. But SJ, I'd love to ask you, because you're doing social media for B2C, B2B, you're all over the map on what you're doing out there from a time perspective of posting, all of these kind of things. Who do you see in the competitive landscape when it comes to social media?
I think that honestly, who you're competing against is real people, individuals, I'd say. And that's why we kind of say that it's better if your social media kind of feels like it's a real person, because typically someone going to social media is either looking to connect with their friends, connect with an influencer they like, a celebrity they like. Not many people are going to social to check in on how a business is doing. That's not really where you go. Usually you're going to social to be entertained, to cry, to laugh, to avoid work. And so I think really you're competing against real people who are posting. And so that's why our approach that we suggest is feel like a real person. Sometimes even the approach, Aaron and I have seen the approach of making your social media manager a persona for your business can be super successful. Talking in first person can be super successful as well on social. That brings in the relatability aspect, it brings in the personability, and it also just makes you feel like more of a person instead of this big brand with a big logo. And that's not really why people are on social.
Yeah, I agree. I'll take it a little further too. You're not just you're also need to look at it from the perspective of you're competing with every single thing that somebody is seeing in their feed in that day or at that moment. So, people are often B2B businesses are often the guiltiest of this, thinking that they're just competing with their competitors on social and they're only looking at their competitors, when in reality, they're competing with every single thing that's coming up in that person's feed on LinkedIn or Instagram or wherever it is in that moment or in the span of a day or a week. So you have to stand out among a sea of posts from, to SJ's point, people's real people. They're your professional network if it's on LinkedIn, influencers on LinkedIn or elsewhere. We all see that there's professional influencers on LinkedIn now. LinkedIn has become sort of an interesting world for this kind of professional influencer idea. But on Instagram or Facebook, these other platforms, it's your family, it's everything. So, keeping sort of this myopic view that like, oh, I'm just competing against my competitor. Yeah, they're there too, but you're competing for attention. That's what you're competing for. And the attention is, you're in competition with your own grandmother, if you think about it.
That's good.
Come on, grandma.
That's good.
Yeah.
It's good. I will say my mom is on Facebook 24/7, so
Mine too.
I'm constantly getting videos sent to me. But
we're competing with your mom,
Yeah, literally.
yeah, she knows what's going on in the world with Facebook. But something else that I'd like to touch on is obviously the attention span, right?
Yeah.
We're busy, especially in the B2B world. You're running, you're gunning, you're all over the place. You're seeing the same thing over and over in the feed sometimes, right? And it looks like the exact same thing, and there's no voice, there's no personality, there's nothing fun about it. And I just saw a post on LinkedIn the other day by an individual that basically called out, I'm sick and tired of seeing these posts. And it listed out 15 different posts that are constantly coming that are the exact same for everybody. And, so you're competing against that everybody's doing the same thing. So take a risk, experiment with it, right? You're competing against the same stuff that people are posting. So how do you stand out? You go experiment with it, go have some fun with it, get your voice out there, get your personality out there, which I think is so important. And I think another piece that we need to call out is you're also competing against the algorithm, if you will. Right?
Yeah,
LinkedIn just came out and they've got videos now. They've got short form videos on LinkedIn now. So now you're competing against that attention span. How do you touch that? Right? It's something that's constantly changing. And so I think a big piece of this from, who you're competing against is 1, the algorithm, 2, the attention span, 3, the resources, the time that you put towards it, right? Consistency is going to be important, especially with these things that are changing with the algorithms. You have to have somebody involved in it. You can't do a post, set it, forget it, leave it for 6 weeks, and then come back and do another post. You need to be more active, right? So you're competing against a little bit of resource constraint as well, because there is time that needs to be dedicated to it.
Absolutely. I mean, you cannot just set it and forget it. You have to participate. If people are commenting, hopefully your content is slowing them down enough, they care about it enough to want to engage and comment on any of these platforms. You need to respond. it inspires conversation. That's why SJ was saying earlier, sometimes we'll play with the idea of like having the social media manager be a character in the feed where they're saying things like I, me, my, first person. It's conversation. But if you're going to behave that way and you're going to put out a post that great for you, it's people are engaging with, the worst thing you can do is to just ignore that and walk away, not reply to them. I think you should reply to every single legitimate comment. When I say legitimate comment, I mean a comment that's not just like a bunch of fire emojis or any emojis. Like that's not it. But if somebody's taking the time to leave a comment, to write something, you owe it to them and to the algorithm, which, continues to feed engagement if you're conversating with someone. But from like on a real level, you owe it to that person to respond. It's just part of not being a jerk in business too.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, we've talked a lot about, the barrier to entry, what you're missing out on if you aren't participating, what you're gaining if you are participating, and all of this kind of comes back to one thing. And to me, it's, what's a win? What is a win within the space? How do we define a win with social media? And I've got an example, a personal example of something that has happened recently, but I think it comes back to the expectations of what we're trying to accomplish. And one of the things that you just mentioned, Aaron, that I think is a win as well is the engagement side of it, right?
Oh, absolutely.
You or the business account, whatever it is, participating in that dialogue is so important. I would love to just open it up for you two to answer, what would you consider a win on social media? And again, from the lens of leadership, right? I've invested into SJ as a resource to be able to come and help build our social media presence. How do I define a win? Because we already talked about it. It's a little challenging to go, hey, it gave us this direct ROI, right? So how does that look from a leadership perspective of, hey, we've invested time, resources to get this out there. What looks like a win so that leadership knows what they're getting out of this?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, from my perspective, if you're speaking to leadership, I think going to go back to what we said earlier, I would include it in a conversation about the full marketing mix and the strategy that led us to using specific social platforms, because you don't need to feel that you shouldn't waste your time being on every single platform. Just because it's there doesn't mean you need to be there. So, you take a look at your strategy, your goals, your persona, and based on the persona, you determine where should I spend my time, my money, investing in posting and managing social. Then you look at that full marketing mix. You show the leadership where it fits in. You can ideally, if you're tracking things appropriately and you're doing it the right way, you can show where people are entering your site or different touch points with social. But ultimately, I think visible engagement and reporting on that engagement is the most direct attribution or win that you can show. More than anything else. I mean, really. And that's a vanity. I'm not going to lie. It's somewhat of a vanity metric, but that's what we have to work with generally.
It's a good point.
Totally agree. I think that engagement and honestly, making people stop, and you can tell they've stopped by engagement. But also, people commenting and being like, this was super funny, or OMG, this is so me, or whatever they say, that kind of makes you feel like, okay, I have impacted them in some way, or I've made them take time to actually leave a comment and it's positive. And then you can kind of start building that relationship, because then they expect you to continue posting stuff like that. And then they might start coming back to your page specifically for your silly, relatable content or whatever it may be.
Yeah. That's you're making me think of something. It's a good point. It's like somebody might be waiting in the wings for a really long time. I mean, there's also the potential that someone is viewing your content, they appreciate it, and they're not engaging, and then suddenly they are. I mean, I've done the same thing. I've followed accounts in various platforms that just looked vaguely interesting to me, and I didn't necessarily want to engage for whatever reason. It probably wasn't something I even really thought about. I'm just seeing it over and over, and I'm like, yeah, that speaks to me. Yeah, okay. And over time, as it builds, I start to think, yeah, this is really, they get me. I love this, whatever it is. And then you start to engage. So you have to think about it. It's different than other channels. It can be kind of vague from a win perspective, from direct ROI. It's challenging to see. And those people that are hanging out, that are following you, they might be looking at your content for a significant period of time before they actually start engaging. It's an interesting space in that way, but it can be once you get them hooked and they feel like you understand them, the content you produce is speaking directly to them. There's a real opportunity for deep loyalty there over time.
Definitely. And for me, an example of a win that, is personal is the trust signal to the marketplace, right? And the example of that is we were at events, attending events all of September, and we had a bunch of social posts that went out with those events. Now, the main driver was the events, but the social was awareness of, hey, we're at these events, we're in your space, so on and so forth. And what ended up happening is somebody hit me up on LinkedIn. They reached out to me, hey, saw what you're doing on social media for LinkedIn and, the tech space, would love to chat, right? To me, that's a win. Is that a tangible ROI that we can tie to that? No.
Not right now.
We did a bunch of social posts. We did, we attended events. There was a bunch of stuff going on. It was the marketing mix. But the reason why that conversation got started was because of social media, right? And so that's a piece that it doesn't have a direct ROI, but it has a touch point in that ROI that could potentially come of it, right? So that's an example of a win to me. And I think that it goes into, when we talk about what a win is how do you go out there and win? And for me, I think of kind of two different pieces of it, right? One is obviously the trust signal, getting personality out there, taking the leap and going for it. But another win that comes out of it is employee engagement. And so when I think of this, I think of it kind of in two fronts. One is employees get to see what's going on the social feed to understand, hey, this is kind of our voice, tone, personality, relationship status, if you will, of how we operate, which is a lot of fun because new prospective employees want to see that kind of stuff because we're in the age of return to office, working remote, right? COVID had a big impact on that. What does that look like? Engagement on social media is good on two fronts. One is for the external client, prospect, so on and so forth, but also for the internal clients, right? Your people, your employees that are working, how are they engaging with it? And I think that that's a major piece to be able to have a successful social media strategy and get a win is getting your internal employees involved, right? They need to be liking, they need to be sharing, they need to be adding context to these posts that the team is putting out, right? It's got their voice, tone, personality on it. You've got your voice, tone, personality on it, and you're touching your network as well. But that's my opinion on it. I think that employees should be engaged because I think it definitely helps. You get the culture side of it from your internal people to help win, but then also you get the win out there to your network and the company's network as well. But would love to open it up to both of you on, how do you go about the process to set yourself up for success and call it a win?
Yeah, I don't actually, do you want that?
Yeah, I was gonna say to that point that, you're making me think about the employee engagement. An example we have coming up is that, and Aaron, you touched on this earlier, but thought leadership. Your social doesn't always have to be silly, goofy. I think it is great if it is, but some really great examples of successful B2B LinkedIn specifically pages is when their employees will post thought leadership on their own profile, tag their business, and then their business reposts it. And then, say you go to your business, go to some B2B business LinkedIn, and you can see all their employees, all their thought leadership. You can see that they're smart, that they know what they're talking about. They have niche understanding of the industry. And I think that representation of your team's knowledge is really useful. And it does show your personality just in that's the more professional route, I would say.
I totally agree. Well, I mean, it comes back to this idea of, people tend to trust people more than they do brands. And it's the people that are the experts within an organization that makes the organization strong, as much as an identity, the brand's identity. So that is always going to be the driver. You see it often. That's where we have these like LinkedIn influencers, but your own people within a company, if they become genuine and prolific and they're distributing professional content that shows what they're passionate about and what they know, and then that's being shared by the company page. It develops trust all over the place, but that's I think that's the way to really amplify things. And to your point, Sam, to get employee buy-in in everything from the culture to social media engagement, all of it. For whatever reason, well, not whatever reason, I can understand this. I've seen this here and elsewhere. It's hard to get employees to engage with the company's social media account. Oftentimes people just don't want to do it, especially in a larger organization, because it feels like social media is one of those places where it kind of merges your personal life and your work life in some sense. And I think that people want to have, I understand it, but like a rigid barrier between the two things. And it doesn't help the company from an engagement standpoint, because if your employees are engaging with your content, especially if they do it within shortly after a post goes out, it gives your post to the algorithms an immediate boost. It shows engagement. So you really want to have people in your company participating. It also strengthens that internal culture. But if you're able to encourage them to be thought leaders in their own right and publish on their LinkedIn accounts or wherever it is that makes sense for your company based on persona where people are hanging out, it's only going to get them feeling more deeply connected to who you are, and it just feeds itself over and over and over. And some of the best ideas, I'm reminded of, we did a webinar earlier this year with Tom Bapp from Skyfi, and he was talking about how they've done a really good job of they're what they do is really creative and interesting and fun and still professional on social for the brand. But a lot of where it comes from is they've got this room that they created internally where people just throw out, everyone has an idea that is going to be considered. It doesn't have to be just the social media department, the content department. I mean, everybody is on social for the most part today. Everyone has a voice and an opinion. People like to have fun. And so they're getting their team heavily involved in kind of the ideation process, which means that when that content goes up, yeah, of course they're going to engage with it because it was their fun idea that got out into the real world. And then, it comes back to the joy in aspects of this, which it's funny. I was talking to Tyler, our director of marketing. He's like, I'm not really sure that joy is the thing that people are after. They're after results. And I don't disagree with him at all. In fact, I entirely agree with him. But I think if the people doing the work, making the posts, if it's like SJ or me or anyone, if you're having fun doing it and it's interesting to you, you're going to invest more in that. And it's going to come through the other side. People can feel it. When a company on LinkedIn is just being boring and just not engaged. And I don't say boring, that sounds trite, but that's true. If people aren't engaged in the act of creating the content because they believe that it's going to elicit an emotion in some capacity from the person on the other end, then it's going to feel that way when you see it, and you're going to ignore it and scroll right by.
You're spot on, right? And I think that the joy piece of it is the content creation, the posting, all of those kind of pieces of I had a part in this, if you will. My voice is coming out of this. And I'll give you an example. I worked for a company a few years ago, and they had a great social media team and found articles for us to post and everything like that. But it almost felt like in addition to my job, because it was, I have to go in, I have to post, I have to do this. And it wasn't information for me that I was like, this is awesome, right? This is differentiated. I wasn't having my voice put on top of it for the marketplace that I was attacking or going after, if you will. And so there was a bit of a challenge there just for me personally, where there wasn't the joy of, I'm going to go post this. The other aspect of it was this: when I posted it, I went on my LinkedIn and everybody that I worked for posted the same exact thing, right? So it was the same thing over and over again. So I was like, why am I even posting it? I just spent 30 minutes, doing this and so on. So having that, right, is the joy piece, right? Putting your own brand on it, having your own voice, right? And some of that comes from the company, right? Of, hey, we've got this post. We want you guys to go put your own spin on it. Or this post came from Sam Grice at 4B Marketing, right? He's the director of strategy over here. Go engage, those kind of things, as opposed to, it seemed like we were just pulling things out of the ether, right? And it didn't really resonate with me. And so that's part of how you can win, is get people excited about it because it's their thoughts. It's their, it's what
comes back to authenticity for me when I hear that. What's happening is, especially when people are like, I've seen this before, companies, fabricate a caption or a post and they send it to the entire company and ask people to publish this thing. And it's like, well, that's cool, but you should tell people to publish it and to modify the caption, put their own spin on it, because there's something entirely inauthentic about that. there's something inauthentic from the employee's perspective when they're being told to publish something. It doesn't feel like something they are connected to. And I think especially today in social, where inauthenticity is everywhere. People just, you can see when someone's just doing something just for engagement, it feels inauthentic. It's like, wow, I'm seeing it a lot right now. You're publishing this thing because you know that it's going to get people arguing. It's not real. Whatever it is, like authenticity is so important. And making sure that your employees, when you encourage them to engage and to post on behalf of the company or for themselves, it needs to be something that they actually care about and believe in. People can sniff out that bullshit. I'll say it, it's what
Yeah.
it is. Like,
Say it.
yeah, it's nonsense. Like nobody wants to see inauthentic garbage continually shoved down your throat. And if that's what you're doing, and you're doing it over and over and over again, and nobody's engaging, you're actually teaching the algorithms that your content is not valuable to your audience, and it will ignore you. So
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
might be creating a hole for yourself.
Well, I love the authenticity side of it. And I think that that goes into the deeper root of how you win. And so I want to show a couple of examples of companies that are doing a great job of this, right? Businesses that are taking it from, the inauthentic, just the typical post, right? Putting their voice, tone, personality out there, right? So that they can have success, right? Relatable content, right? I mean, for me, Salesforce, they crush this with the influencer, if you will, corporate bro. Him going to videos at trade shows and going through and talking about being a mid-market rep and now an enterprise rep and all those things. I've lived that, right? So it's very relatable. Every time he comes up, I stop because I'm like, that is exactly what I've lived. I've had those exact conversations. And, SJ, I'll let you touch on some of these as well, because I know that there's some strategy behind it. I just love that one because every time it cracks me up, and I'm sending it to all my friends. We're going back and forth. Like, that gets me talking, right, about Salesforce and going, what's the Salesforce video going to be this year? I know this year before Dreamforce, I was looking forward to it. I was excited about it. What's the video going to be? But SJ, I'll pass it over to you to talk about some of these wins with these B2B brands.
Yep. So I totally agree that the influencer move is genius, and it again touches on the kind of making your brand into a person. Salesforce is not claiming to be the corporate bro, but they are working with the corporate bro who is at their events and representing them with this kind of paid partnership influencer collaboration. And you can see people in the comments, people say, I love this collab. Someone said, I don't know him, but I like him. It's like, it's intriguing new viewers who maybe have never seen that influencer, and now they're like, oh, this guy's hilarious. And it's intriguing you, Sam, as someone who has seen this before, it's coming. And like, to your point, Aaron, this is training the algorithm to say, oh, collaborations are working for this account. This profile is succeeding when they do partnerships. And so, that's always a good move. We always suggest that doing it's specifically on Instagram, you can do a collaborative post. And so when you do that, it's posting the video to Corporate Bros Instagram and to Salesforce Instagram, which is genius because you get the followers and engagement from both profiles on the same post. So love that. Another great thing that Salesforce does is highlight their team. So that other photo down there, it's showing behind the scenes of their huge event. Salesforce, yeah, definitely one of the best. They just have a truly entertaining page, and there is some informational content on there, but it's mostly relatable, funny, highlighting their team, things like that.
And one piece I want to add to that as well is just Salesforce really is a data company, right? They're a CRM, marketing automation, data. And for them, what makes the data work is the people. And so they've taken that kind of as a connection of the business of, yeah, we sell software, but also we're the data company. We're the people company, if you will. And so they've been able to make that connection, which allows that voice and tone to come out as well.
Totally. Then we have accounts like HubSpot, who they have a really nice combination of funny versus kind of engaging their audience in a more business-minded way. So these two posts I included show that duality of their page. So we have, you know, Mercury in retrograde jokes with little hamster meme, and all the comments are like, OMG, that's so me, or just, you know, laughing emojis. Any engagement is good. We'll take it. But then they also have real talk, and they have this kind of this series where they have, it's called Real Talk, and then they have different questions, and they prompt their followers to comment and give their answers and share their experience. And it seems like that works really well for them as well. Then we have ServiceNow, which I found as a great example of the thought leadership that I was talking about earlier. And so there's two images I chose here that highlight two of their employees talking about their niche understanding of their industry and their business. And both of those were reposted by their, you know, parent company, wherever they work. So I will say our favorite examples definitely include humor, definitely include relatability. And then if you want to take the more buttoned up approach, I would say the thought leadership is a really strong way to go.
Yeah, and a big piece that you called out there was the reposting by the company, right? They're empowering their people, right? Empowering the thought leadership. And so they're reposting to their page, and they're kind of doing that double dip on LinkedIn, right? It doesn't have the ability that Reels does on Instagram where you can post on both, but they're essentially doing that by reposting to their page with that thought leadership, which is great. So I know that we've got about 12 minutes left here. A couple more topics that I want to get over here is, you know, we've talked about how to get started. We've talked about the benefits and if you don't do anything. But what is the barrier to entry, right? How do I get started? Say that I've got a B2B business. We've done some social media. We've done some LinkedIn, but we aren't posting consistently. You know, what is the barrier to entry to get started? Because there are kind of two sides of it as well. There's the organic side, there's the paid side, you know, what platforms, so on and so forth. But what is that barrier to entry? What do I need to step over to get started? Would love to open that up to you, Aaron.
You firstly, you have to really understand your audience. It comes back to persona for me. You know, understanding who they are, what they care about, what drives them professionally, personally, emotionally. And so that's going to do a few things for you. You're going to understand what platforms you should invest your time on, whether that's Instagram, Facebook, X, Threads, whatever it is. So understanding them means that you're going to know where they hang out digitally most of the time and where you can reach them. It's also going to help you understand the messaging that's going to work, whether that's humorous, thought leadership, slightly unhinged, all of these things. Knowing who you're talking to is the way to create content that they care about. That's it. The barrier to entry, I mean, outside of that, it's on paper, it's pretty straightforward. Create an account, create a plan, start publishing consistently. But I wouldn't say go out there and just start throwing spaghetti at the wall. You know, take a look at that persona, get people like SJ, some other folks. I think actually having sort of a varying generations and familiarity with social in the room, having this conversation can be really helpful because you're getting different perspectives. But certainly having somebody who like SJ in the room who is going to bring a completely different mindset because they've grown up in this space and understand it and live there. You know, come up with that plan, and then from there, don't complicate it. Don't be so focused on having the most polished content that you don't wind up doing anything. I think that's something that you see about. It's like, I want things to be great and highly polished, but sometimes the thing that is most relatable is pretty damn raw. You know, so don't let that be the barrier to posting consistently.
Well, and that's a great point is from a barrier of entry, it's pretty raw, right? You just mentioned that, right? Even just going on and posting a couple sentences of thought leadership from the company account of what that is, that's a pretty low barrier to entry. You don't need to get a new technology stack to be able to do it. You don't need to go out there and get a big list pulled down from ZoomInfo or Apollo or something like that. You don't need automation set up, right? From a entry perspective, you could start just with that, right? and start with the platforms of where you believe that your audience is, right? We know in the B2B world, LinkedIn is the number one, right?
Yeah,
So
definitely.
knowing that, right, barrier of entry, it's pretty low. It's not a massive investment from a perspective compared to a big email campaign or a direct mailer campaign or a big advertisement play or anything like that. You can start pretty low and small and get going without having to do this massive investment to be able to do so.
Yeah, you just have to start. Yeah, sorry, SJ. Thought you had something to add. No?
Nothing to add there, SJ?
Okay. I mean, it's true. Yeah, I mean, you could take it further. We use publishing tools, like, and there are things out there, but most of these platforms also now have native publishing tools. But yeah, really, all it takes is an account to start publishing. Again, I want to highlight that you should be more intentional than that. You should put thought into it. You should consider when are you going to carve out the time to do this? Consistency is important. You can't just post and then disappear for 6 months and think that it's going to do anything for you. I mean, rule of thumb, it's like generally you want 3 to 5 posts a week to be truly effective. And so to do that, it's a content monster. You don't want people to get bored and fed up with what they're seeing from you. So you really need to think about what you're doing and understand who you're talking to first.
And that's a great point. I think that leads us into kind of the actionable steps that you can take to get started, right? One of the pieces you just mentioned was the content monster, right? Having a bunch of pieces to put out there, because then that goes into the stale thing of posting the same thing over and over again. And that leads us to kind of our first topic, if you will, of an actionable step is, compile a list of 100 ideas, right? So then you have ideas flowing consistently of what you could be posting, as opposed to, we've got our 3 to 5 posts this week. Wait, it's Monday. We need to come up with 3 to 5 more posts, right? So start with a big pool, right, of ideas. All ideas welcome, if you will. Kind of the next phase of that is once you have those 100, start to examine what people are engaging with, right? How can you kind of piggyback onto what somebody else is doing, ideas like that, where you can carve out your own niche in the space. And the last piece is to continue that content engine, right? Create a Zoom room, create a Slack channel, whatever that channel is, with all of the employees to throw out ideas, right? One, from an employee engagement, the work from home, right? Make them feel a part of the culture, which is a big piece of it, right? But then also for engagement of when things are getting posted, that's going to help a ton. Those are kind of the top 3 for me as actionable steps. But Aaron, SJ, anything that you would like to add to kind of ideas to get things kickstarted for companies that are just starting their B2B journey?
I mean, I think those are the major ones. I mean, that's what we do. One other thing we might add is, thinking about what are the things that are highly relatable, things that are trending at the moment that you can seize on. You see this in every space now. You used to just see it in things like Instagram and some of the more like what would be considered traditionally B2C platforms, but like people taking memes, viral posts, viral content, and then applying it to their own brand, their business, what they do. Have those topics outlined so you have this pool that you can draw from all the time, but also, think about being agile and look at when it's appropriate to take a viral trend and apply it to your business, because it's something that people are already seeing everywhere and they're going to think it's clever and funny and they'll engage. I think that's a really huge step that people often miss.
Love it. Yeah. Keeping your ear to the ground. Know what's going on in the marketplace and what's happening out there. And even though you're in B2B, some of those B2C trends can apply, right? Or even just the personal trends that are going on in the world can apply to the B2B world. So don't be afraid to take some of those that are happening over here and put them into your pool of gold, if you will, to be able to publish as well. So I love that.
Have to take risks, calculated risks, but don't be afraid.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I love it. Well, perfect. That wraps up our discussion today. I did not see anything come into the chat or the questions. We'll keep it open for about 5 more minutes here. But for those that did attend, want to offer this up, right? The first 5 respondents, we'll do a full social media audit for you. What that consists of is not only the brand, tone, voice, personality of what's happening within your social media, but also, how many posts we're doing. Where's our audience living? How are we utilizing this today? How is it touching the different aspects of the funnel to help drive those things? Because that's what leadership is looking for, right? We're all in this business to be able to go help drive revenue, reduce costs, reduce risk, support cash flow optimization and asset utilization. And so that's what that analysis would look like. So feel free to email me at sam@4bmarketing.com. And I will get back to you if you're one of those first 5 respondents on getting you a social media analysis. Before we close it up, Aaron, SJ, final thoughts. Anything that you would like to add to the joys of B2B social media?
I would say have fun, experiment, let your personality shine, and see what works.
There you go. I totally agree. Yeah, don't be afraid to be a little unhinged.
Yeah.
I love it. I love it. And go check out the 4B Marketing LinkedIn, because there have been some good posts over the past couple months there. And like I said, some of which have been at my expense, which is totally fine because it's funny. So
that's all.
Alrighty.
Yeah.
Well, Aaron and SJ, thank you so much for your expertise and your time today to talk through this. Really appreciate it. And thank you all for attending.
You've been listening to Send This to Your CEO, the B2B Tech Marketing Podcast. Tune in next time for more insights and strategies to stay ahead in B2B tech.